Hi, good afternoon. This is Adam Taylor calling from the ITS Group. We are the UK distributors of Securely. In the last couple of years, we've been discussing web filtering with various schools that we work with. We've been in education technology now for 30 years. During that time, we built up a lot of customers, a lot of good relationships, and we've been speaking with them about the kind of issues they've been experiencing with web filtering. Securely is kind of the first of its kind. It's a really innovative product that we're really happy to bring to the UK. We've made it compliant with various UK laws, things like the Prevent Strategy, GDPR, and now it's really ready for the prime time. This isn't going to be a sales pitch. Really what we're just looking to do today is just to go through a few common issues that schools are facing, some things that our customers have raised, some things that other people have explained to us, maybe at trade shows like the Bet Show. And the first half of this isn't even going to be about Securely. It's just going to be focusing on those issues, the kind of problems that people are experiencing every day with their current setup. Then we'll move on to some of the cool future technologies that Securely brings to the table and how that can hopefully integrate into your school, into kind of your systems and the way you work, and really just give you a better result and a better experience in the world of web filtering. The second part of this title focuses on child protection. That's really important to us as well. So Securely is primarily a safeguarding system, although it does web filtering and it does web filtering very successfully. The bulk of the useful functionality, the stuff that really wows people and really brings Securely into its own, is all focused around the child, protection of the child and safeguarding. So if you're coming into this as an IT person, maybe you've got an IT perspective, one thing you might want to look at is, well, do we have methods in place for our safeguarding team to follow up on the safeguarding side of our web filter? Or is it all dealt with by IT? That could be one of your problems. Conversely, from the safeguarding side, if you're coming into this as a DSL or maybe in the leadership team, you might wonder, are you getting enough information out of your web filter, and is it being presented in a way that makes sense to you? And we're going to be exploring both of these viewpoints in this webinar. So let's begin. So obviously every school needs a web filter. That is our UK law in education. And for years, the old appliance model has worked fantastically. Very simply, all of your downstream traffic goes out to the internet through the box is filtering, and everything that comes back down comes back through the box, and again, the box is filtering. And that works quite well. Certainly for the last 10 years, that has been a very successful approach. However, what we've been seeing more recently is the concept of the untethered devices. So devices that maybe jump across networks. You might have multiple campuses, you might have multiple sites, you might allow students to take their device home with them, or potentially to a library or a public study space. And really it's been the rise of the device take-home that's kind of prompted us to look into new technologies outside of the appliance. Really, if the devices are connecting to the internet off-site, they need a filter that is also going to be off-site, and that's just something that an appliance won't do. So this is the first major problem. Arguably, this is the biggest problem that schools face. If you're looking to implement a one-to-one Chromebook policy, or maybe a one-to-one iPad, or laptops as well, how are you going to keep those devices protected and filtered when they're outside of your network and outside of your control? It's a big problem. The school's safeguarding responsibilities do not end just because the child is off-site. If they've got school equipment with them, then it's still your responsibility to protect them. And even just outside of compliancy, if we're looking at things like the moral side of things, you obviously want to make sure that the children are protected online no matter what, regardless. So that's our first problem. For those of you watching live, what I'd say is, just as a little bit of an exercise, if you just get a notepad and a pen and write down 1 to 5, as we go through each of these 5 problems, just put a tick or a cross next to it if you feel it applies to you. And once we come to the end, we can see how many of these problems Securely might look to solve for you. So that's number 1. Number 2. So the internet, obviously massive, very large. For the most part, it's completely untangible. So we're talking about millions and millions of domains hosting billions of websites. They're all in flux. They're all constantly changing. They're all being updated. And that's just websites. So that's not even including things that we put out there like blog posts, Twitter tweets, social media side of things, video content. So your appliance will hold a blacklist, and that'll be a blacklist of all of the known domains and websites and URLs that aren't okay, that you don't want in your school. And again, that's great. When the internet was a lot smaller and the internet usage in schools was a lot less, that model worked really successfully. But it is still something that needs to be updated constantly, whether by yourself or by your appliance manufacturer. They might offer some kind of maintenance service, which includes updates to the blacklist every week. But it's very reactive. The new websites are popping up quickly. You scramble to add them to the blacklist, and then they're blocked, and then that's good until the next website comes along. So that's the next problem, is the internet is faster than we are. New websites pop up, new blogs pop up, things like image searching, social media posting, live streaming, much like this. Everything moves super quickly, and it's just getting bigger and bigger, and it's fractal, it'll keep going, and it's something we just can't keep up with, certainly not manually, and to a lesser extent even automatically as well. We've got things to consider like, proxies, SSL traffic, so encrypted traffic. There's lots and lots of different ways for this content to bleed through to get to you, which your web filter may not be able to react to. So that's problem number 2. Okay, number 3. So in our last example, we were talking about everything that the student is pulling down from the internet. So, all of the websites they're going to, but just as much of this traffic that needs to be filtered is upstream. So we're talking about Google searches, that's the main one. Other search engines like Bing, also your social media side of things, lots of things being put out there. So posts, comments, likes, lots of things on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook. So where does the filter come into this? Well, it'll have a blacklist of keywords. And in that blacklist of keywords, it'll have all of your standard categories for safeguarding. Things like swearing, drugs, violence, sexual terms, pornographic terms, things like that. On the prevent side of things, we've obviously got to consider things like radicalization, extremism, very, very modern problems. And again, this is just like the previous example. The appliance is going to be updated with new keywords. It's going to be updated with new terms, new phrases, things to be aware of. And someone's going to have to maintain that again. The problem is that a lot of keywords are very, very nebulous. English, simple language, we have lots of words with dual meanings. Certainly terms associated with gambling, flop, river, they're all standard words. But even just simplifying other things, you can have racial slurs that are just standard words as well. Or you might use a term for somebody in an offensive way. How do you get around that? It's the same word. And ultimately, someone in your school is responsible for this, and they're going to have to go through all of these alerts. And if that person is you, then you're probably quite familiar with the concept of false positives. Having to go through endless amounts of checking, going through each one, saying, yep, this was genuine, this one wasn't genuine, this one was. And God forbid if you do find one of these words that's, a racial slur just based on regular words, they're going to have to be independently vetted because the appliance isn't going to know how you meant it. The context isn't taken into account. So that's problem number 3. So problem number 4, we mentioned beforehand the prevent strategy, general safeguarding. In the UK 2018, we've got things like the Digital Charter, we've got Casey to consider now as well. And obviously with Ofsted being a part of that, there's never been more pressure to have to show that you're doing your due diligence with safeguarding. And what does this look like on the appliance side? It tends to look a lot like a spreadsheet. So we're talking reams of text, big tables, all plain text, very, very black and white, just goes on forever and ever and ever. And this could be things like website access logs, potentially program access logs, login times, chat logs, if you've got quite an advanced filter and you can monitor chat on social. But again, it's a lot of data. It's really, really a lot of data. We're talking about very, very long log files, depending on how long they're stored for. It's ultimately going to be somebody's responsibility to sift through those. Now, that could be yourself. That could be safeguarding. More often than not, it's IT. They're given that arduous task. And not only is this a lot of information to sort through, and yes, you can search through it. You can use Control F and have a look through that way. But it's still reactive. You're having to react to an issue and then find the evidence kind of afterwards. The way that it's presented is making this a very, very dull task. And again, it's just plain text. It's just all logic. There's nothing contextual about those files. And that sort of leads into our 5th problem, which is probably the big one, the main one. With these log files and potentially screenshot capture as well, you are collecting evidence. And why are you collecting evidence? Because you need to prove something when an issue happens. You need to show, it was this student, it was at this time and date, they did it from here, this is what they said or this is what they did, and you just got to gather all of that information up together. But even once you've done that and you've built your case, there's no guarantee that the parent is actually going to listen to you anyway. Just a very brief anecdote off to the side. Many moons ago, I used to work for customer support for a video game company, I won't mention which one. And we were dealing constantly with parents calling up because of their children gaming online, talking to people on things like Call of Duty. Who are they talking to? What are they saying? Getting banned. My child would never say that. Running up a big credit card bill. My child would never do that. Whether or not it's denial, or whether or not genuinely they believe, my son's been hacked, or it was one of their friends, you can't punish them. It is still sort of your word against theirs. And more often than not, they might find themselves siding with the child, and that's just going to make your life more difficult. In some of the more extreme cases of the schools we've spoken to, staff have been abused by parents who will just plug their ears and refuse to listen to what they're being told. So how do you get around that? That one is much more of a mindshare thing than anything to do with technology, but it is still a problem. So this is where Securely enters into it. We haven't really talked about Securely up to now. Securely is a cloud-based filtering platform focused on safeguarding and tweaked for the UK market. So what we mean by that is we've got specific keywords, specific websites associated with our language, our spelling, our rules, things like, as I mentioned, Prevent and GDPR beforehand, so compliancy with those. And really the core of the product is to strip out all of the complexities of web filtering and just try and deliver you a service that is very, very simple, very effective, and can be used by more or less anyone within the school, so no longer within the remit of IT. And what we're going to look at now is 5 technologies that create Securely. These are 5 core components of the solution and how they directly relate to each of those 5 issues. So if you've gone through your checklist, I'm hoping you have at least 1 or 2 of those ticked, and you can maybe imagine yourself in situations where those would have applied to you. So the first one was take-home devices operating outside of the school network. So how do we resolve that? How do we do things like Chromebooks being filtered off-site, iPads being monitored off-site, and generally devices that are on a network that isn't your own? So as I mentioned, Securely is fully cloud-based. It's 100% in the cloud. There is no hardware. There's not even any software. There's just nothing. It's just a service. And by having it 100% cloud-based and client-driven, we can apply this to anything. We can apply this to any platform, on any network, in any country in the entire world. So the benefits of being cloud-based on a filtering side, they're innumerable. With an appliance, it's very much the here and now. I'm connected to this network, that connection is being filtered. If we were going to take a more of a cloud-centric approach to this, which is exactly what Securely does, we're no longer really focusing on the box, the appliance. We're not focusing on the connection. We are purely focusing on this person right at the bottom, which is the child. So we're talking about the filtering, the safety and security of all of these platforms, whether it's web-based traffic, social media, emails, things they've posted themselves, search terms, videos. All of that trickles down through into every device that's being provisioned. So again, this could be your school PCs, school laptops, a trolley of iPads, take-home Chromebook, take-home iPad, even BYOD. There's no restrictions whatsoever. It's all the same. And Securely is licensed by user, so it all just comes down to the child. What this takes the form of is reports that are based around the child, not the device. So we're no longer looking at log files. We are purely looking at what has this child been doing online, who have they been speaking to, what have they been saying, what kind of websites and searches have they been doing. And that's a much more modern approach. It fits the modern 2018 model so much better. Okay, so the second problem was new content. One of the specific examples I've been given by a customer was sites.google.com. So these are user-driven websites, but you're obviously not going to block the Google domain to block all of those websites. They're constantly popping up. A lot of them are mirrors. And when they're mirrors, it's a website that may have been blocked somewhere else and rehosted somewhere else, and now that can be accessed again. We've also got to contend with things like VPN websites, hide.me, online proxies, and that sort of things, which are essentially just going to work around a blocked website and allow you to access it from a browser within a browser. So we've got 2 key technologies here. The first one is page scan. So with Securely's page scan, it's going to be doing a man-in-the-middle inspection of the web content. It's going to tear through it, and it's just going to look at every single keyword that makes up that web page. So if you imagine, a web page or a web portal, there's text on the screen that relates to exactly what that website's about. Each one of these terms links to a category, and Securely is going to go through all of these thousands of words per page and say, right, well, there's 19 words here associated with violence, or 27 words that are associated with racism, I'm going to slap a big category on that saying that's a racist website, and I'm going to block it based on that term. And that could apply to more or less anything. So the same exact thing happens with searches, new websites, new content, things that are posted online, videos. It's all getting torn through PageScan, inspected, indexed, and then security is going to make that judgment call and say that's okay or that's not okay. The second one, big data. This essentially means that we're no longer storing, a list on an appliance that's in your school. We are storing a regional list on the cloud server that everybody is feeding into. So you just imagine how big this database can get over time. If you're talking about, every single page going through PageScan, that result then being stored and indexed and stored in the cloud. Another school halfway across the country might try and access the same page. Security's already beaten them to it, or already knows that that website isn't safe, and it's blocked it based on that. So very simply, the more it's used, the smarter it's going to get, the more accurate it's going to get. It's now been on the market for a couple of years. Started off with 1 million websites, and now there's billions of indexed websites in there. New ones being added every single day, and that's all fully automatic. And because that's cloud-based, again, it's going to mean every single device is going to have this really, really high-level protection from day one. It doesn't matter what network they're using. It doesn't matter which device they're using or where they're using it. They're going to have this holistic protection that's only going to get smarter and better over time. Okay, so number 3 was the keywords. Again, if this is you, if you are the person who is responsible for going through log files and looking at keywords, maybe use another system where you have like violations or alerts, incidents, you might have to be the person who has to go through each of these and say that's genuine, that's a false positive, that's a false positive, so on and so forth, taking hours out of your day. And really life would be a lot better if you didn't even have to deal with false positives. If you could just get the alerts that are actually genuine, speed things up. So Securely doesn't just base things off of the keywords. We do use keywords, but that's mixed in with syntax. So we call this sentiment analysis. You may have heard the term natural language processing, or NLP. It's a similar thing to what Google themselves do and other things, where you don't have to type in an exact phrase. It will just have a bit of fuzzy logic, and it will say, I get the genuine idea of what you're saying, and I'm going to redirect you accordingly. So with sentiment analysis, that takes the form of being able to tell the difference between an external, say a curse or an insult, bullying somebody, versus something maybe internal or maybe something neutral. So you could say, I hate Fridays, and I hate myself, and I hate you. Those are 3 different sentences that basically use the same words, but it's just the last word that changes the context of the entire sentence. And Securely is able to analyze that and say, right, that's an offensive statement, that's bullying, that's an indicator of depression, that one means nothing, everybody hates Mondays. So it's very, very smart. So with 92% accuracy, we use this engine for every piece of information that's being fed into Securely by the child. This is going to show you things like cyberbullying. It's going to show you self-harm. It's going to show you any kind of search terms that you might need to be made aware of, and it's not going to show you every single thing they do, because you don't need to see every single thing they do. As a kind of a precursor for the security side, we've certainly had people saying about, my right to privacy. Securely doesn't allow you just to sit and squat and watch people post on Facebook all day. It's just going to be raising the things that you really need to be made aware of. Starting from the top, that would obviously be indicators of suicide, depressive statements, anxiety, huge one, and any kind of victimization or bullying, both being the victim of it or the person doing it. In either instance, Securely would make you aware of that. Now we can see some instances of that here. So this is just a capture from our demo system. If you look through these, there's very, very few keywords that would typically be on a keyword list, because if they were on a keyword list on their own, they'd cause too many false positives. I'm going to end it, and that's a Facebook post. That in of itself, there's no keywords in there that's going to be concerning, but put those words together in that order, and suddenly it becomes concerning. So Securely is going to show that. It's going to show that it's the student. It's going to show that they did it on Facebook, and it'll even tell you where they did it. So which public IP. Was it your school network, or was it at home? Was it on 4G, or was it from a public hotspot? Just look through some of these other examples here. Obviously, we've got some tweets. We've got Twitter, Facebook posts. So this can be things like wall posts or comments, things that have been posted on other people's walls. And then right at the bottom, we've got our Google searches as well. Again, can't stress enough, it's not going to show you every single Google search they do. It's just going to show you the things that you think you need to be made aware of, which is why we put them in the section here called flagged. They're flagged for your attention. Your safeguarding lead can just then go through them. We can sort these by the category. We can also sort these by the person doing it. So if you wanted to build up a profile over time of that person, maybe they would start off with some less concerning searches that gradually became worse over time, and their social media trail then reflected that, showing a sort of a decline mentally where they might actually need some help and they might need someone to speak to. Okay. Fourth problem is the log files. Kind of spoiled this one a little bit with the previous slide, but obviously, as I mentioned, your standard filter, your standard appliance log files, website access histories, they are going to be plain text, very, very boring looking. Every single web hit, whether it's good or bad, is going to be shown to you. So just tremendous amounts of information, which you then have to sift through yourself. With Securely and its UI, everything is very, very graphical. It's been designed to look kind of like an iPad app, so nice and user-friendly, very, very simple to understand. I'd go as far as to say if you have an iPhone, you could probably take a look at Securely and just sort of immediately get it. There's very, very few options. There's almost no settings presented to the user. And as a result, we have this lovely, clean, modern-looking interface that runs in a browser. You just open that up on any device. Any of the user-facing settings are editable within that browser, so you don't need to go into any kind of back-end or system. It's all doable through one interface based on your rights. And once you're in there, it's very, very easy just to take a quick look through the list at all of your new instance. So we've got things like we can categorize these, we can sort them by the user. We could sort it by something like the policy, which would be the year group. We can also sort it by the category, and we can even sort it by the content type. So we can break it down between, this is recent, so that's everything done chronologically. You could filter that down to sites, so just websites, or just search terms, just Wikipedia, and there's a few others as well, like just social media postings or just YouTube videos. And then by cross-referencing those different categories, you can get some really, really useful reports out of it. So you can say, I only want to see the results for pornography attempts for videos conducted by year 9. Or I only want to see searches for drugs by year 11. That sort of thing. And that's just a couple of clicks within the interface will take you there. You can specify the time period as well. By virtue of Securely being a cloud product and cloud hosted, there's no issues in terms of database size. So all of that data is just stored indefinitely anyway. When we provide Securely, we also do offer an element of training for the system as well. As I said, we really want to try and bridge the gap between the IT department and safeguarding and pastoral teams. So a big part of that is actually getting them to use it themselves, getting them to grips with the interface, getting them comfortable with the tools, and this will ultimately mean that they don't have to come to you, or if this is you, then you don't have to go to IT to get that information. You can just grab it yourself. Now, a big piece of feedback that we've also had is that if you give them a web interface, they won't use it. Fair enough. Some people prefer email alerts, so obviously we have those as well. In this instance, this is an email alert that's come through based on an email from one student to another student. Again, I think you'd be quite hard pressed to see that there was any keywords in there that would flag a conventional system. But because of the arrangement of the words and the fact that it is directed to the receiver of the email, it's flagged that up. That's a flagged activity alert, and that's sent through email by the auditor safety bot of Securely. At the bottom here, we've got an accuracy. So this is how Securely gets smarter. When you get the alerts come in, as I said, we're already at 92%. This was up from 70% 3 years ago. You can say whether or not that's accurate or not, and that feedback is going to ultimately make Securely better. It's going to make it smarter. It's going to make it more accurate in terms of the things that it's flagging up to you. So as you just approve or deny each one of these terms, the service will improve as well. So the things that we flag up would be pretty much anything that the student is actually feeding in. We can report on things like block pages, but most of the time you just want them to be blocked. You want them to be protected. You don't necessarily need to know everything that they're doing. For some of your high-level categories like radicalization, obviously you'll want to be made aware of those. And for the rest of it, it's really more about what they put out. So as I mentioned, that would be things like their search terminology in various search engines, their social media postings, anything of that nature, which we would probably want to look to inspect. And then when those email alerts come into you, you can just click yes or no, and Securely will learn from that. Okay, number 5, and this is the big one. So this is the parents. How do we get around the fact that the parents might not listen to the school? And you can't put all of the blame on the parents. Sometimes they're naturally just going to side with the child against what they're being told. I've certainly heard a lot of excuses, and I can completely understand from their point of view, the school is telling them something, they have no way of verifying it for themselves. So because Securely is a cloud service, and because it sort of sits in the cloud, it can be accessed by both parties. So both the school and the parents have a login for it. That's something that's completely unique to Securely. By giving the parents a login, they can check their child's online behaviours, they can check their search terms, even their social media postings, the kind of websites they've been accessing, and both the school and the parents have access to exactly the same data for that child. Now obviously the school will be able to see it for every child in the school, whereas the parent can only see it for their child or children that attend that school, but the fact remains the parents will have access to that. So this actually takes 3 different forms. We've got 3 different delivery methods for the parents. The first one is that they will also receive email alerts. This will take the form of a bi-weekly newsletter, which is just a Securely Parent newsletter, and it will give you a very nice top 10 of sort of, 10 of the search terms that we think you should be aware of, 10 of the videos they've been looking at, what's trending. It will also report on some of their positive behaviours as well, so which educational websites have they been looking at, what online resources they're using for their homework. It can open up new conversations with them, because you'll be able to see exactly what they're studying, what they're learning, give your 2 cents, give your unwarranted opinions. And then at the same time, anything that they're doing that you should be made aware of, going back to that flagged activity, that's going to be raised up to you as well. By clicking within the email, you'll actually have your very own login to the web interface. So again, it's going to be completely locked down just to your child, but you can still access the same information. So what have they been searching for? What have they been looking up? Who have they been speaking to? What have they been saying to these people? What about some of the emails they've been sending and receiving that are a bit questionable? Again, Securely won't tell you everything, it will just tell you the things it thinks you would need to turn your attention to. And within the web interface, as I mentioned, some people don't like using web interfaces. Either it's not convenient enough or it's fiddly. So we do have the third option, which is the mobile app as well. The parent can register their mobile app. They'll be given a login by the school, which will be based off of the email address they provided as next of kin, typically stored somewhere in the school's MIS system. And then once that's done, they'll be able to download the app, log in with that account, and see all the information that way. And if you've jumped ahead of me and taken a look at this screenshot, you'll notice we actually give the parents a little bit control of their own. And this makes it a really, really good value proposition for the parents. You're not just talking about the sharing of data, you're actually giving them the option of setting up their mini home web filter with their own controls, their own preferences, and putting all the power in their pocket and in their hand. So as an example of that, the school will set a filtering policy for home. It might then set a second policy which is slightly more relaxed, called the take-home policy. When the child goes home, they leave the school's public IP address, so they walk off the network. They've now connected to another network outside of the school, and Securely's recognised that and switched the policy to something more relaxed. However, when they get home, the parent now has a slight element of control themselves. So for example, they could disable social media with the touch of a button. They could switch off gaming for 2 hours. They could even turn off the internet on that device if the child's being disruptive. And this is going to empower the parents. It's going to really bring them into the conversation. It's going to make them much more familiar with the concept of web filtering. They're going to be able to take direct responsibility. They're going to have full transparency. And this now aligns them more with the school. You both have the child's best interests at heart. You both have the same information and you both have the same tools and you're working towards a common goal. So this is going to make the parents much more receptive in things like parents' evenings or any kind of incident where they might have to be brought in. It also means that if there is something that needs to be looked into, the school doesn't have to provide a report to the parent. The school can simply tell the parent that they can check the app or just check the web interface or just check their emails. And it's all nicely automated that way. And with these 5 technologies combined, Securely really does bring something quite refreshing, quite new to this market. A market that has been a little bit stagnant with just appliance-based web filtering. We're going to be allowing you to have more insights. We're going to filter out all of the guff in the middle, so you're just going to see the things that matter. As I said, we're going to give this as a powerful safeguarding tool to the safeguarding team. We're going to try and remove IT from the conversation a bit more so they can focus on their actual jobs. and really just make it a nice, smooth, clean and positive experience for everybody, whether it's the school or the parents. Ultimately, that is also going to benefit the child. So that's our introduction to Securely. I'm now going to just have a quick look through the chat. If you have any questions, please feel free to type those into the sidebar. We'll go through those. If there's anything that I can answer, I'll do my best. If not, then I can drop you an email or pick it up on the next webinar. I'll just give you a minute to type that into the chat if you do have anything you want to ask. So in terms of platform support, it's more or less everything. So we've got Chromebooks. Chromebooks is the kind of the primary platform, if you like. That's something that can be pushed down from Google, pushed down from G Suite, nice and simple. And that's basically a self-install. After that, we have iPad support, which is done through what's called a pack file. So if you use like an MDM, something to manage your iPads, that's just something you can deploy that way. And then when the iPads go home, they'll be continuing to sync back to our Securely server. And then everything else that you mentioned there is, Windows, Mac, Android, Linux, and we just do all those through DNS. So we've got three different methods there. Google for Chromebooks, Pack for iPads, and DNS for the rest. And all of them will be covered into the same interface with the same login for the child. Okay, well that looks like it's it. So thank you everybody for attending. I hope you found this useful and enlightening. As I said, I've been Adam Taylor with ITS. We've been proudly providing Securely for the UK for the last 3 years. We're going to really continue to push this product because I think you'll agree it's an absolutely fantastic entry to the market. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to give us a call. Our number in the UK is 0208 869 1950. You can drop us an email at info@its-group.com. We're on Twitter and Facebook. Website address is its-group.com, and that has links to all of our socials. Also, please check out our YouTube channel, which is going to be where this is going to be hosted afterwards. Follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter for the latest updates for Securely, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks very much.